Takoa chupohata and taiwa e kwekune Americana ponene hakene haihen mae. Good morning. My name is Wayne Yazza Jr. I am from Picuris, Pueblo, New Mexico. I am the former governor and utilities director as of today, but I was asked if I could start the day off right, and it's only custom in my tradition that we start off with the prayers. So in due respect, will you all please stand up? Going to Chatai, Chupohata, we win a Wichita win, watch it took a moment, yo. Galene wa e pa te he, pon he, chon he, chan he, pa ke he, pa ne ta ne ki ma o he chapuin ki ka hele haimen, ki so hawi a siu pio men, ku o pia chapo hele a chai pa chi a moment, yo. Ho tenta yo, sa ane yu ko mene, pene, pa ho mene, cho chalene, piwene, sa tele taichen, ha chene, haichen, mio wen, soi wen, ho tenta yo. Te piu pa te o pa te noi te ko pa pi me khale ten ten kha chotai ene ma pa te ko cha ma cho ko cha man chang ko cha ma pa te ko cha ho ten ta yo homo pi enai te ho pi enai sao yo pi enai ho ten ta yo pa e wea e pa khemo ito pa khemo mapa pi wela sia te chi ke sin ken kamo hono pi wa sia te chi pa ko lo so wea pa ko lo so se tona pa san sa te chi ho ten ta yo wa sa wa che ku su me chi Chupohata in Taiwa e Ta'achena ho kuntawaha waini. So thank you. You all have a seat now. Just a reference what I was talking to is just giving the blessings, asking the Creator for giving us another day on earth, the blessing, the breath, like was told yesterday, it means a lot. And just asking guidance, prayers, and that we all take what we learned today and take it back to our respective communities, our homes where we are. And the most important thing, like we say, is getting back to our loved ones. So with that, please enjoy the presentation, and I'll hand it back to Mr. Anthony. Thank you.
Aloha, Wayne. Nui ko mako mamahalo ya oe no ka awamukule ana no ke kakahiaka nui no ka pule ana no ka hapai o na mana mai ka aina e mai ka aina pula pula o ko poe mahalo nui. Thank you, Wayne, for bringing the mana of your people and your place to this venue this morning.
Thank you. Mahalo.
Hey, folks, before we get started, we want to just send a couple of thanks out for all of the work that goes behind the scenes here at this conference. Leslie and Jackie and the whole leadership team, mahalo nui for everything you've done to make this a great success this year. How about a round of applause, folks? And if we could, one more round of applause for all of the staff here and the technical folks who've just made this go on time and make us look good and sound good. One more round of applause for everybody in the back. Yeah, thank you. Aloha kakahiaka, everyone. My name is Nāʻālehu Anthony, and I'm the moderator for today's panel, Power, People, and Place. And I'm wondering if maybe we just got that a little wrong, and maybe it's actually Place, People, and Power. This is such a provocative title in this provocative time that we are in right now in Hawaii. Yesterday Mayor Bisson kicked it off with a short speech, and one of the things that he talked about was this idea of the affordability of Hawaii and do we get to stay. And so today's conversation on the stage is central to that thought. When we're looking at the cost of energy, it touches everything. Whether it's transportation, whether it's food, it's materials, and certainly every time we turn the light switch on, there's a cost associated with that. And, as those rates go up, the bottom falls out for some people. By some estimates, we're losing between 9 and 11,000 people a year who have to go somewhere else to call home because of the costs associated with living in Hawaii. And so there's a very real set of consequences here for what we're talking about. And so this thing, it's been termed the being priced out of paradise, we've heard it in different settings, is really the core of what we're trying to get at today. And so while the panel here, we're going to talk about geothermal a little bit, there's so much more depth to what we want to talk about in the choices that we make, not only in the renewable energy space, but who gets to make the choices that we are trying to make in the larger context of how we all find our way to not only more resilient communities, to zero carbon by 2045, but also to make sure that our people can stay. And so that's going to be one of the themes that goes through this entire conversation today. Where does the final cost of energy come in the lineup? Because it sounds to me like there's a curating of a set of relationships that are more important than the final cost of what this is going to end up being. And how does that fit into the larger structure? Because I think, you know, there's folks here who are trying to just drive cost all the way down in different ways, or maybe not. I mean, maybe I'm wrong in that thought, but that, you know, there's certainly in Hawaii there's a large ROI, larger than anywhere else in the country, which is why we have so many people entering the market. But where does the values land for the people in Molokai in terms of, you know, resilience, sustainability, cost, and all the other things that you have to negotiate when you're having 1,000 cups of tea?
So as I stated, what was important to our community is decision-making control. Ensuring that any profits that come out of our system is reinvested into our infrastructure, is reinvested into our community. We on Molokai pay the highest cost of a lot of things. Energy, electricity.
How much is gas right now in Molokai?
$6.99 a gallon. Yep. And we only have one airlines on and off the island. You know, groceries are just through the roof.
How much is a gallon of milk?
I don't know right now. I don't drink milk.
$12 for a gallon of milk? Hey, so you guys get a sense of the pressure here, right? Thank you. And so in balancing that out, the control and the moving profits back into the system were paramount.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you know, of course, affordability is an issue. And with the support of the community, and this being a community-owned, consumer-owned co-op, we got the support through congressional direct spending to bring down the overall cost of the project, to ensure that there would be savings for our people. The CBRE targets renters and low to moderate income folks who were left out of the initial energy transition. And so this is part of equity. This is ensuring inclusion for everyone.
So Wayne, I'm going to turn to you. You're not a geothermal developer, but I think your folks' story and your Pueblo is really important to helping to contextualize the concepts that Keani's talking about. And I know you have a few slides, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk it through, but the premise here and the reason why we're just so incredibly happy that you would sit on the panel with us is this idea of ownership of the energy generation then gives you agency for people to stay, right? And we talked about that for the panel, but I'm wondering if we could just give you a few minutes to talk through kind of what you folks are doing at the Pueblo and help us bring to life the story through the slides and talking through that with us, so I can ask you a couple of other questions as well.
Sure, so you want me to start with the slides?
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, my name is Wayne Yazza Jr. from the Pueblo of Picuris, which is located in northern New Mexico. How many of you have been to New Mexico by chance? Can I get a hand? Awesome. So you might have seen, as you know, in New Mexico, there's 19 tribes, Pueblos, including 2 Apache tribes, and of course our Navajo tribes too. So with all of us, there's about 23 different tribes in New Mexico. But just going, like you said, just talking about my little Pueblo, being out of all of the tribes, I like to joke about them. Like the other tribes are in the thousands. My people, we're only 300. So like a hand, that's at other tribes. My people, we're only a pinky. So I'm just to show you, but going about our project and how we're going in renewable energy, so like energy sovereignty and practice. I'm glad to be here, number one. Thank you for the panel here. Thank you for Miss Jackie for inviting me out here. So Picuris, what we're doing is we're building resilience and microgrid. Being able to be self-sustained at the end of the day. That's the ultimate goal. So with that, let me go to this. So as you know, Picuris, Pueblo, we're already in northern New Mexico, right at the top, so right at the border of Colorado. And as well as right here is a valley, the hidden valley of Picuris, not to be mistaken with the ranch. But no, nothing but surpasses my Pueblo as the hidden valley. About my Pueblo, our current governor is Craig Quancello. Last year I was the former governor, so being a lieutenant governor, being in a small Pueblo, it feels good to provide for your people. So Picuris, Pueblo is located 60 miles north of Santa Fe, 24 miles south of Taos, on the scenic highway of 75 and 76. My Pueblo has about 306 members that are enrolled and about just a little over 90 homes. Our traditional way of life starts with respect to the land and our natural resources. Our everyday life consists of farming, hunting, providing for our families, and honoring our culture by practicing our traditionals, beliefs, and our ancestors that did before us. My Pueblo, we still have kivas, so we still practice our stuff underground. So we're being a part of Mother Earth where we come from. Our tranquil village rests along the banks of the Rio Pueblo, which nourishes the evergreens, cottonwoods, aspens, grasses, and flowers that blanket our valley and surrounding mountains. The scenic beauty is unsurpassed in New Mexico, the land of enchantment. Picuris Pueblo is nestled in the setting of the beauty as what is known as the hidden valley of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in northern New Mexico. Here's a little bit of our traditional regalia. Like I said, we still practice our culture, our language, our songs as the time of memorial when it was passed down. But here's my lovely daughter. This is our regalia with the traditional manta, with our belts, our moccasins, our feathers. Her name is Rafaelita. And as well as my third war chief to the left, which is also my younger brother, Celestino. So now this is our way of dancing. Where we're dancing is our mountain sheep dance. And on the right is my son, Logan Yazza, and as well as Tasha Snake. So if you guys ever get a chance to come into Mexico, please come by. Our main feast day is August 10th, which we like to know as Pueblo Revolt Day, 1680. So if you guys ever want to know about that, please come talk to me after this or look it up. It's a very significant, if you guys don't know the history of New Mexico about the Pueblo Revolt. So our vision of energy is knowing to achieve energy sovereignty and ownership of all assets to serve our needs. So we built a microgrid back in 2017, and we commissioned it. Being in the Pueblo, we're off the beaten path. I like to joke that we're only way to know Walmart is about an hour north or an hour south. Where I live, we have no traffic lights. The only one, the traffic light is a school bus one to slow you down. Like I said, to me, crickets and coyotes is music to my ears. But just to start with that, the Pueblo decided to go off the beaten path. We don't have the traffic flow to sustain any casinos or that, or economic development as far as getting bigger, but we are rich in our culture and our land. So as a Pueblo, we just said, well, how do we be self-sustaining in the day? So the tribe, we got together and we decided, well, let's do a solar array. We were approached, and a lot of us, again, we always joke, well, what's a megawatt? Pulling out our phones, right? Technology, using it, showing it in us. But in the end of the day, we decided to build a megawatt, which we decided to do in phases. So the first megawatt we did was a 750 kW PV located on our lands. Our second one was to install another megawatt going back to the Pueblo. So as you see, our first megawatt is the one in lighter colors over time, which was, like I said, commissioned in 2018. And the end of the day is that we're able to subsidize our people's light bill. We get a meter base that we sell the energy back to our local co-op, Kit Carson, and they give us a revenue. Like I said, we're able to pay our light bills, people's light bill during the summer and winter months. $75 for the winter months because people use it more for heating, and $50 for the summertime months. But end of the day, my ultimate goal is not have my people pay anything. Just growing up, like again, just we always say joking, Picuris always laugh, but growing up, me and my brother used to think that not having lights or hot water during the summer months was a natural thing. Due respect to my parents, we had a roof over our head and food on the table, so that's all we needed. But nowadays, I mean, I would never want my generation, my kids, to ever have to go through that, to be made fun of at school, I mean, to be belittled. I mean, not when there's tribal leaders like myself that are here to give them a better education, give them that head start in life. So that was the main project of giving a megawatt. So like I said, a darker colored array is a foreground and a 750 dedicated to the Pueblo lows, 1,400 bifacial panels, fixed tilt, ground mount, solar inverters, highly interactive diagnostics. The lighter colored array is the background older of the megawatt, which we do have to do a PPA. I know you guys heard that, purchase power agreements, the local co-ops. So normally we're able to get a single G liquid cooler inverter and unlimited system dynamics capacity. So with the first array, we got it done, and then of course, fires happen around our community and that, or stuff breaks down with the power lines. So we were sitting in our tribal councils one day, and the lights were out for 4 or 5 days, and we were looking at each other like, we have a solar array, but we can't utilize it. So I said, well, let's do another one, because number one is when the power went out, we didn't have no way of calling 911, no communications. And that's a very scary feeling, not being able to call for 911. Second is our elders. A lot of our elders depend on our senior centers for home cooked meals and that. And third was not having for our oxygen machines. As you know, a lot of oxygen machines are plugged in, so we are running around in emergency like chickens with our heads cut off. Which, by the way, I like all your chickens roaming around here free. But anyway, it's a real eye-opener. So as a council, we decided, well, let's do another one. So Department of Energy granted us another one upon completion of the first one. So right now we're in the phase of building another megawatt and bringing it back to the Pueblo this time. So this is a feeder of the map, that how we're pushing it straight from our Pueblo, from the solar array. You can see the solar pans, and bringing it back to the Pueblo, which we have a hybrid system of because where I live, we have nothing but rock, so it's hard to dig in it. So we did a hybrid of half of it going overhead, but coming into my Pueblo, we have an ordinance that all electrical things are put underground, just so that everything's not a sword to the eye. So, Picuris tribal values, we have deep connection to Mother Earth, sovereignty, and self-determination. So breaking dependency on third-party infrastructures. Key one right there. End of the day, you want to be in charge of your own utilities. You want to have that command. Another one is protection from external threats, wildfires, impact the grid. And yesterday's, what I was listening to is cybersecurity. That's also another key thing, because being disabled, not being able to turn on or turn off all your utility is very a concerned issue. So I was very grateful to be able to learn that presentation from yesterday as well. And that's basically my panel for now. If you guys have any more questions on that, please see me after this. But thank you for letting me present on my little Pueblo. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And actually, your presentation in this conversation sounds a lot like some of the conversations we've been in just recently, whether it's in Molokai or Lahaina or other communities around the state. So thank you for bringing that perspective in. And I wanna ask you one question about breaking the dependency on third-party energy and why that's so important. And I know you talked about the safety risks when you lose power, and especially for the elders who rely on power to be able to persist every day. But for a small Pueblo, to me it sounds like a bold move to say, okay, well, we're going to go and do a megawatt of PV and keep adding. What was the piece of the puzzle for you that finally got the Pueblo to jump and say, yeah, we're going to do this?
Having a say-so of being self-determined. Like I heard yesterday, resiliency. I heard resiliency sexy, but I would like to add, it's also beautiful. Being able to dictate what your power is, being able to have that control, being, like you said, in the States, being a federally recognized tribe, it's the trust responsibility, of the federal government to assist us. But that little trust responsibility is fading over time. So as far as sovereignty continues, we push it to our limits. Because sometimes I'm a fair believer that sovereignty has limits as well. But as being tribes, there ain't no greater feeling than being able to dictate of your power and being able to provide for your future, your next generation, being sustainable at the end of the day. And I can't help but to push that, giving jobs, making jobs for your infrastructure, for your community. Because like you said, a lot of the kids, they go away, go to college and all that. We tell them to do that, but they never come home. So letting them know, because sometimes family members have an elder take care of cattle, take care of farming, so they're not the fortunate ones to leave. So I'm a fair believer of giving them an opportunity too, that if you stay home, there's flourish, that Pueblo's gonna grow.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, mahalo. That's a really important piece of the puzzle, I think, for all of us here when we're talking about the trust obligations that persist. You know, as you folks may or may not know, Native Hawaiians are not federally recognized, but there are obligations that the U.S. government has to Native Hawaiians codified in different ways. And for those of you who don't know terms like PLT, Public Land Trust, or ceded lands, see me after class, because all of that absolutely applies to this conversation on renewable energy. You know, one of the things that I think is, thank you. We'll be holding PLT 101 at lunch. You know, Mana, I want to turn to you here because like there's an interesting piece of the puzzle, which is that the Maui are, okay, as per usual, a little further along. You know, and yet there are some very similar conditions that persist. You talked about the erosion of your land base over time, and that I think you said 4% of your land base is left, and that you have been utilizing not just you, but the iwi and the whenua have been using the tools to stand up different economically viable pieces of the puzzle to counteract what Wayne's talking about, which is people leaving and not coming back, right? And we talk about that. I brought it up at the beginning, but the brain drain in Hawaii is very real, and it's important that we have the ability to have people stay at the core of this. And you had a slide up yesterday that you went by that you talked about two things. One is what you did with the offtake of the heat, right? There's like other things that you can do with the heat besides generation of power. And the other is what you did with the revenue that came in from the PPA to the Crown. And I want to give you a minute or two to just talk a little bit about, like, with a little more in depth as to what the benefits are to community in the way at which you and the trusts use those resources to reinvigorate your community.
Yeah, for sure. Tūtai mea tū kia koutou ki tēnei ata, kia koe te rangatira mō tō karakia, mihi atu kia koe, kia koutou katoa. I actually just wanted to start off with a acknowledgement as well to Lehu, because anyone who can make a few ugly fellas from New Zealand look not too bad and sort of coordinated in a video, I think deserves a round of applause. How about a round of applause for Lehu and for the video? Just also want to thank everyone on the panel this morning as well for sharing their story of people, place and culture, and the significance of what that is for all of us around the world. And I think that also has a wider context of community as well, and whoever is part of our community being able to support them. As Lehu said, for us, really early in the piece, when our families all got together in the 1990s, when we got control back of not only the land but the resources that were in our lands, our people did one of the most humble things that I've ever seen, and this was my nana and her sisters and cousins and things like that. What they decided to do was to say, well, we are shareholders of this trust, but we will forego dividends in the typical Western sense of the word, and we'll donate those dividends into a charitable arm. And the purpose of that charitable arm is to drive benefits for our wider families. Their concept was very simple. If you take care of me and not my family, you're not taking care of me, because my family are a connection of me. And so they made the obligation to our charitable arm to look after our families. And they actually wrote in the beginning of the trust deed a whole bunch of values that we have to focus on, such as the value of trying to provide housing for our people, connecting them back to the land, supporting our maraes, supporting our sacred spaces, and supporting our environment. They literally wrote them right at the front of the trust deed to require us to continually focus on those things. And then, as I said, they before they even received $1, they forewent all of that money and decided to donate that into that charitable arm for all of those purposes. Now, that was sort of 30 odd years ago, and the obligation that I feel, or the kuleana that I feel on my shoulders now because of that thinking, we sort of have a twofold focus of what we do with that putia, or that money, or those returns. The first part of it is we simply just look at splitting that putia, or that money, into three simple areas, and then a portion of it goes to each of them. A portion of it goes into distributions through that charitable arm. A portion of it goes into managing other industries so that the other resources within our area get investment in them as well, such as the land, such as water, such as tourism, such as housing. Other areas that are important to our people also get investment. And then the other sort of portion that we do is we manage growth and connection. In times when interest rates are high, we pay down more debt, and interest rate is low, we invest more into our community and into our people. So it's a very simplistic model. It's not too complicated. We try to keep it as simple as possible. But that's been able to allow us to build up these other portfolios, where now it's not just our geothermal or just our energy, but it's these other assets that we have across portfolios, where we've been able to expand on these resources, so that these resources can also drive more connection, more job opportunities, and more ways in how we can serve our people and our community. Within the distribution side, it's a really interesting concept, because we can now drive a whole bunch of social procurement opportunities, because our charitable arm also keeps our commercial side very accountable to the social responsibility that we have. It's not just the 8%, 10% that drops out the bottom, but it's the 90% of costs that we incur to create that return. And how are we socializing those costs for our charitable side and making more connections? Very, very much so on the other side of our commercial side. Instead of just paying a grant and paying a grant and paying a grant, can we invest into the school system? Can we invest into the health system, the food system? We do benefits such as we provide food to our families, our elderly, and now we have a strategy. We're saying we spend X amount on food to provide for our elderly. Should we now invest in the food industry that provides that support for our families? Should we spend $1 million up front, or $10 million in total, that then has a continuous distribution? Having that sort of source of mana motuhake, or sovereignty, in the first place, that key of that connection to our geothermal and to our original resources that were so prominent and important to us, has helped us to now take those principles and concepts and apply them across multiple industries and across multiple distributions channels that we have for our whānau.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Andy now, and building off of what Mana's been talking about. Yesterday he talked about two examples. One where it didn't go so well, and then they were maybe trying to extract more than what the resource could bear, and then there have been other iterations of this that are sustainable and running what is applicable to the resource. And I'm wondering, Andy, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Upflow, and how you bridge some of these conversations through language and culture, and through engaging communities in a way that really allow that agency to take hold in the process, not just at the end when I think you call them the pots and pans are being installed at the top of the resource.
Yeah. Kia ora ngā mihi nui ki koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. First of all, I just want to say geothermal is not the answer, it's just the medium through which we get to the benefits. And I say that a lot, and I used to be the ex-president of the International Geothermal Association. When I say geothermal's not that important, it didn't go down very well. But I think the most important thing for me in this space is to think about geothermal isn't just an electricity generation opportunity. For me, going around the world and seeing communities have projects in geothermal, it's that leftover fluid afterwards, and what you can do with that, using it for industrial processing, using the minerals, using the gases for other economic development opportunities. That's where we see real benefits to community. And I've seen some projects in other countries where they pitch those economic development opportunities before they even talk about the power station. For me, the power station's really boring. Like, who cares? Like, it's not even that cool or exciting. Firm power's pretty good. But basically, the cost of getting the wells and that fluid can be borne by the electricity project, but it's what you do afterwards that counts and what truly can transform community. And it's really interesting when you see, you know, there's lots of examples around the world where people have taken that leftover fluid and really boosted up their economic and industry on site where they are. And I just really hope that Hawaii gets to benefit from that and does that, because the transformation is absolutely like epic. And you see healthy people, you see engaged people, you see people who get education and other benefits. And it's not about Māori doing it right and everything's right, because we've got a history of, you know, things went wrong. And I think I'm really proud about our industry as we talk about the things that go wrong and we don't hide it. It's very transparent. And we say, yes, you know, back in the day, you know, we've been in this game 40, 50, 60, not myself personally, I'm not that old, but, you know, we learn from those things and we share with the greater community so that all the nerds that are working on it now have learned and understand those things and can apply the lessons to the next one and the next one. And it's a really open and transparent community. And so I think that's a really important aspect, is that everybody's on a journey, and so this community of development. But this type of energy generation offers such a great opportunity to Indigenous peoples to get to that sovereignty, that mana motuhake, because when you can choose how to develop your industry around it, it's really important. I remember going to COP26 in Glasgow a long time ago during COVID. Oh my God, when was that? And I remember going to sessions and seeing lots of melanin-challenged individuals sitting up of a certain gender saying things like, if only we had commercial and economic models that thought about more than money. If only we had those sort of really, and I heard 4 or 5 of them say that, and all I could think was, what? Like every Indigenous group that's ever existed in all of time. Like, perhaps you should listen more than you speak. And I think that's a message to broader industry, is that, and society, is that we are here now. And the problems that we've got now are going to require really different thinking to solve them. The same brains that cause the problem cannot solve the problem. And perhaps it's time to let someone else have a go with a different way of looking at the world. And I think about the engagement with Indigenous groups when you're pitching ideas and projects. They don't give a crap about the dollars. They go, yeah, the dollars have to add up, yeah. What's going to happen with the environment? What's going to happen with our social and cultural things first? Now tell me how that goes, and then we'll think about the money. And I think we need that kind of thinking to get us where we got to go. And Indigenous thinking is not, oh, we should let them look after their community and goodwill. It's actually smart for the world that we actually want. And I ask all of you that are in this sector not to be doing favors for Indigenous groups, because it's a really nice thing to do. But when you're sitting in a paid role, you have a choice about the decisions you make and how you work. You can go to work and get paid for $1 and come home, or you can lean in and make things happen and push and make things go over the line. And I ask you all, in your roles, in the places where you sit, lean in and help Indigenous communities here lead these sort of projects and get them over the line in any way that you can, because the outcome will benefit you and your family and your next generation as well.
Thank you. You know, we haven't had the geothermal conversation for about 30 years, right? And the last time we had it didn't go well. And, you know, I guess the way I would offer this, Andy, in this next question is that if we were just talking about geothermal as a new entry to getting to zero carbon by 2045, and everything else was going great, then this might be a different conversation. But in actuality, we're in a place where I've been in community meetings where they're saying they don't want large-scale solar on the mountain behind them. I've been in community meetings where 200 people show up saying, well, we don't want that windmill or that offshore wind. You know, we've been in community meetings saying no to all kinds of things, right? And I think that maybe for some of the people listening to this conversation about geothermal, the expectation is like people are going to come in mass and say no. My question here is that every time we say no to something, we're also inadvertently saying yes to something else. And can you help me finish the thought as to what that balancing act is when we say no to these things or no to the scale? What are we saying yes to? And how does that fundamentally upend what you were talking about agency and economic sovereignty as we go?
Yeah, I think it's hilarious when I go into meetings and sit on panels and I sit next to, you know, global wind people and solar and everyone pits each other against each other and said, is it geothermal or is it wind or is it solar? Which of you are going to win? What's the best place here? And I think we should all win immediately as fast as we can. There's actually space for all of us. And what also happens is oil and gas gets to sit out here and watch us fight. And they just carry on perfectly. And so for me, I say, I hope wind wins, I hope solar wins, I hope geothermal wins, and I hope they all win real quick. Because the biggest fallacy is that we need oil and gas. And it's and you think about the subsidies that go to that industry, and if for 1 year we got that $7 trillion into this space, how quickly we could turn it around. So when people say we don't want wind or we don't want solar or we don't want geothermal, when they're asking, of course, because no one wants to disturb or make a choice about development, and you know, every development has a cost to pay. There is a cost to pay, but you have to weigh up the costs that you're paying because you're already paying a price right now. And so you've got to bring it into context and say, if we don't make this choice, we're going to have more than 70% renewables. We're going to have to wait for others to impact us. We don't get to say what happens. We don't get to make decisions. And so I like to challenge people about context, and leadership requires you to think broader than what's just in front of you, because when this is not in isolation that you're making these choices, and you know, we need everyone to make good choices in this space.
And I would offer that in this next question, that the run-up is that land tenure is such a complicated thing. Whether you're a federally recognized tribe, whether you're the sovereign nation of Molokai, whether you come from Aotearoa that has a different relationship with the Crown than we do with the U.S. government, there are land use questions that always come into play. And so this is a question for all of you. You don't all have to answer, but anyone, please jump in here. I'm going to start with you, Keani. And it goes to the timing of when the land use is actually being acknowledged. And I'll cue it up for you. Like, there have been conversations where the community in Molokai has not been acknowledged as a stakeholder until the end, right? There's like all of this development of a potential product. You know, I'll leave what product is out of the conversation because it actually doesn't matter. The process and the timing of the potential use of the land, your conversation comes in very late. It's like, oh, here's the plan, here's where this is at, and we need to check this box now and say, like, okay, what does the community think? And I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit of an example of when that hasn't worked, and what the expectation is now that you have set with the work that you've done to get to 100% sustainable in Molokai, and characterize it as what will work and what has worked, so that this audience has some clues as to how they should persist. Because, like, let's acknowledge it, when you're costing a product, whether it's a solar array, whether it's wind, whether it's geothermal, the time it takes to actually permit it and build it might just be the answer to whether or not it's viable or not. And so I want everyone to pay very close attention to what does work and what doesn't work in terms of timing when engaging with community. Keani.
Mahalo for that question. So right now what we're doing is community makes that decision. We're not waiting for folks from outside to tell us where they're gonna site a project. We as the community have worked together and had this discussion on where we want a project sited, what type of project, and then we go from there. Right now, for as far as like the ownership of the land, there's 2 projects that we have that are, one is on county-owned land, it's over a parking lot, and in front of a community center. And then the other is community-owned land on the west side of our island to provide more resilience to that side of the island. The larger scale project will be around our, the power station around Pala'au, Hikos. But for all of those, it was community decided that first. And for us, that is what works. And that's always what will work. And that's how I believe it should work on the other islands. Community should dictate where the projects are. The indigenous people of this place, Kanaka Maoli, should be the ones to dictate where the projects are sited, because we're the ones with ancestral knowledge to be able to ensure that our chief, our aina, is protected.
He ali'i aina he kawa ke kanaka.
Also, you're the ones that'll have to clean it up later because you're never going to leave that land place.
We are the forever people.
So you're talking about this really inverting. Don't come talk to us at the end, come talk to us at the beginning, and then we'll help you figure it out. Wayne, I'm curious. Go ahead.
And I just want to say that part of our process is no is always an answer. If no is not an option, then we're not actually giving our community a choice. That is not agency. That is not independence. And we're just perpetuating the harm that was done to us by outsiders.
Thank you. Wayne, I'm curious, like you have a different relationship with the federal government than we do. And could you just give us a little window into what the process was like to both internally for your Pueblo, on the discussion as to why you chose solar and how hard it was to build that project out? Was there a lot of pushback from community members or people that surround it, and how hard was it to actually make the decision to say this is what we're going to do to support our people?
Yeah, I mean, Kino, thank you for saying that. Of course, it's to what the people want. You know what I mean, as tribal leaders, we're there for the people. We're here to serve the people. So, you know what I mean, it was being a small community that we're unique, that we're able to get together, have general meetings on, discuss how can the Pueblo thrive. You know what I mean, because again, going back to the federal government, I always think that it handicaps you. You know what I mean, getting a hand me out all the time. One day when the shutdowns happen, they're gonna say no. What are you gonna do? You know what I mean, that's the question. Are we just gonna sit there, twiddle our thumbs, or are we gonna be proactive? You know what I mean? So that was one of the things of figuring, and number one is, like I said, my Pueblo where we're located, we're off the beaten path. So, I mean, we don't have economic traffic flow to go through, you know what I mean? So we couldn't sustain a casino or hotels like that. So again, we're thinking, well, what do we have? Number one, we're rich in culture and land. So let's use, let's harness the sun. Tolene, that's what we say in our language, the sun. Let's harness the Father Sky, Mother Earth, as Indians know my relationship to it. Let us harness the energy of the sun, and as well as going to the land. You know what I mean? In our way is that you always ask, you know what I mean, before you just take. You know what I mean? You offer, you know what I mean, ask the land to work with you. Ask them about this is the way that our people are going to succeed and adapt to this white man's society. And this is the way, you know what I mean, I'm going to be able to provide for our people. So that's, you know what I mean, number one is key, is going to the people, asking them permission and asking the land. And you know what I mean, just figuring out, you know what I mean, being offset, like it's off the beaten path is thinking outside the box. You know what I mean, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? But at the end of the day, you know what I mean, it depends on champions, like I heard yesterday, tribal leaders. You know what I mean? It's number one, who's going to carry these bills, going to legislative, educating legislative. Because as time goes by, legislators change their seats. So, know what I mean? A lot of the old ones, they knew about how tribal works, but coming into new, a lot of the legislators were telling us that, know what I mean? Well, you guys could do what you want, sovereignty. But it goes back to, again, know what I mean? Sovereignty is a word of limitations that were just set upon Native Americans to make you feel good. Because at the end of the day, like we're going through NEPA and all that, I still have to go through a process. If it was a pottery and that, I'm pretty sure if I asked that pottery or shrine, I'm going to build now that it's going to help our people succeed, I'm pretty sure they would give me that okay to move forward. But it's educating, I guess, that going into the future.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's really important. Mana.
Yeah, I was just going to share. One of the very complicated things that we're dealing with is the concept of trust, and secondly is understanding what the enemy is. And so to that point about speed, it's understanding that the fact that we've gone through as indigenous groups being colonized, for us in Aotearoa, New Zealand now, almost 200 years of this colonization journey. And then now we have this massive problem that we have out here with our climate, and then just the cost of utility and the cost of life. And then so now there's this journey that we have to go through where we've got this historical trauma, this enemy that we all have, but then us looking at that saying, the situation that we're in, we didn't choose to be here, but now we're asked to come to the table to try to solve some of these solutions. But it has to be done in a way where we respectfully are part of the solution instead of the solution being driven or given to us, because we are part of that solution. And it's just understanding that you could have the best idea in the world to solve those solutions, but if you don't have a space and an area for that historical journey to be acknowledged, you're going to lose every single time. Because it's not about what the thing is, it's about making sure that people that are on the journey see that thing as part of the journey. And so for us, it wasn't really about specifically geothermal. It was about what is the thing that's going to help us to reconnect and go through that journey and be part of that journey. And if you don't have that kind of mindset and you think, I'm just going to develop really fast because I have to develop fast because we want to solve this problem, then it feels like that 200 years again. And it puts us back there, and we're defensive straight away because we're not part of the conversation of that solution. And so for us, I think that's been hugely key. And then also, there are profits from these projects. There's real money that's been made. And when that real money is made and not put back into your community, then we feel like we have to own that development so that we can drive those profits back into our community. There is a monetary thing to this, and our tupuna, our kupuna, our ancestors, we're very well balanced with environmental, social, and economic capability. They knew what they were doing. They were very, very wise. And so we need to be at those front seats. We need to be at those tables, because that's the only way that we can trust that those profits from these activities that we're part of will actually come back to our people.
Thank you, Mana. And the immediacy of what you're talking about, the enemy of climate change, the enemy that is walking towards us, whether or not we're walking towards it, is a really important piece of the puzzle here. Yesterday, I think we heard some frustration in the room, in the different panels, that were talking about the length of time that it takes to permit, or the way at which projects come online. And I want to punctuate the immediacy part with an email I actually just got this morning. I'm not going to say who it was from, but you all can guess. But it's about the RPS numbers for 2025. So for those of you who didn't get the update, I'm just going to read it. Hawaii reached 37.6 renewable energy generation in 2025, an increase in 1 percentage point from the prior year. Load growth was the highest observed since the utilities began reporting a total net generation in 2022, with statewide net generation increasing by 375 gigawatt hours. I'll cut to the end here. Due to load growth, despite continued progress in renewable energy deployment, Oahu, Hawaii Island, and Maui County all burned more fossil fuel in 2025 than in 2024. this idea, folks, that we're sliding backwards, even though we have this immediacy, we're 19 years out from the mandated zero carbon by 2045. Projects, yesterday someone said it took 15 years to get a solar project done. There was palpable frustration in the panel about permitting. Maybe in the form of a question, starting with Andy, can you help us contemplate, you know, how long projects like contemplating geothermal actually take? And from your view, from where you sit, you're not from here, you're not fluent in all of the challenges that persist in Hawaii, but you have a lot of time in on this one resource. Can you talk a little bit about what some of that path forward might look like for someone like you looking in on this situation?
I mean, start now. So I actually don't think it matters how long it takes. I think it matters that you start now and go as fast as you can, because tomorrow will be another day later. And in Aotearoa, you know, timelines to standing up a power station between, oh, here's a bit of grass to, you know, power going off is about 6 years. But, you know, that's, to me, we should be making things faster. We should be going as fast as we can, but just start now and don't be paralyzed by perfection. Like, we all sit there and say, oh, but this won't do that, and this will not be like that, and what if this is ugly, and what if this road isn't the correct road, and what if, like, everything is imperfect. And if we wait for it to be perfect, we will be paralyzed. What we need to do is get on the road and start heading in that direction, and then as we keep going, keep narrowing it down. But we need to start now. If you're waiting for perfection, you will never get on the path. And so I think that immediacy is really important. I also think, you know, thinking about Indigenous models, and also with geothermal is a good Indigenous model because geothermal project 30, 50 years, but you have to listen to the reservoir. So your reservoir dictates what you can put your pots and pans on the top. So your engine is underneath you, and that is your resource. And you have to listen to how it reacts. You have to listen to how it changes over time. Traditionally, you just start with a small power project, and then you see how it reacts, and then you grow, and you change, and you move. And no one listens better to resources than Indigenous groups and communities, because they have to think about the sustainability of that for generations to come. And so there's a real alignment between really good best practice management of geothermal projects and Indigenous philosophies and thinking. And you have to think that, you know, the systems and the infrastructure from a permitting perspective, from a regulatory perspective, from a management perspective, has to be different if you want a different outcome. And so stop trying to make stuff fit the current landscape, and stop trying to make, because it will take longer, it won't fit, because it's like, you know, the stepchild you didn't want, you know, trying to, oh, it doesn't quite fit the box, oh God. But you need to understand it's going to be different, it's going to be difficult, you have to be different and difficult, don't try and fit the box. I see all the time in investment in these sort of projects, from an investment space, from a grant space, from government, and especially with Indigenous projects or climate projects, they say you can have this funding, but because it's an Indigenous project, you have to also have 20% of your people have to be Indigenous, and you have to do these 5 different things. And basically, they're effectively adding on a burden because you're Indigenous. And you're like, well, why are you not adding that burden onto all the other white people doing these projects? Why are you adding a burden to a project with that investment that's harder for us to achieve? So Indigenous people and communities are already invested in making those decisions about environment and people. They are, if you give them money, they will make it good for their community. You don't need to put extra criteria just in case they won't make good decisions. It's just completely unfathomable to me.
Keani.
To the report you just shared with 2025 using more fossil fuel. There's one Hawaiian value is we don't take more than you need. And the population continues to grow, and buildings are designed to, be air conditioned, and the consumption is just, there's no control over the consumption. It just continues to grow without any capping. And that's something that is often not talked about in these spaces. We heard that Kauai is about 90% toward renewable energy. Molokai has our map toward 100% renewable energy. Maui can do it. Hawaii Island can do it. Oahu is the gorilla in the
Big,
realm.
hairy gorilla of a problem. Yeah.
And absolutely. And so we continue to extract water, which our aquifers are diminishing. Our streams are dry. We don't have the water that we're going to be promising to future growth in population. We don't have the energy for a continued growth in population. The explosion needs to be controlled. On Molokai, we're able to do what we're doing because our population is controlled. And the 2045 goal is not a real urgency for the broader community. It is for us in the room, but for the broader community, it's an arbitrary number. The real urgency is when it starts to hit the wallets. And $6.99 a gallon for gas, which will then translate to increased electricity bills, increase shipping on YB, plane fares, and water and sewer. And then that's when the urgency really starts to happen.
If this was a chemical equation, we would say, what is the limiting reactant until the equation doesn't work anymore? And we have artificially brought in all the other pieces to keep the reaction going. We bring our energy in, bring our food in, bring our materials in, right? And I would offer, and not just because I'm on the board of water supply, but I would offer that it's the water that's going to be the limiting reactant, and then we're going to be in real trouble. There's another really important piece of the puzzle here, folks. And by the way, I picked up the iPad. If you want your question to be asked, just come and bring your drink tickets, leave them over there, and it goes to the top. But seriously, if you have questions here, and there are a few that are really good that I want to try to get to, so I'm switching to the iPad to bring in the community questions. But before that, I want to just offer a little bit of characterization of some of the challenges that persist here. And I'd like to start with you, Keani, in the form of a question as to whether or not you see this as a true statement, okay? So we do a bunch of education and outreach in community, and one of the things that we've been seeing is that when we go into community, I mean, you're right, the idea that, zero carbon by 2045 is just some arbitrary thing for the community members. What they're talking about is community scale, fill in the blank. Depending on the community, they're talking about community scale solar, community scale pump hydro. And I think, folks in the room, there are probably many of you who scoff at that, and it's like, no, we need utility scale. We do need utility scale. We do. But the conversation consistently starts in community at community scale. And we were in a conversation this week about that, and I realized through the conversation that the reason why they're talking about community scale, they're trying to get to 100% renewable for their community. And no one said this to me. This is like I'm trying to read between the lines here, but I want to say it to you and see as to whether or not this resonates with you, is that actually these communities have been wrung dry of all of their resources already. The water has been purveyed to other communities. The really hard stuff to build, whether it's a prison or a dump or whatever it is in their community already. And that the thought of building out something that is larger scale than what their community needs at utility scale is yet another assault on these small communities to have to bear the brunt of what you're talking about, Keani, the large growth that we see, whether it's in the tourism industry or other places. Now, I'm not here to just say, well, if that's the case, then we should build community scale, because the cost implications with that, the cost to run and administer, that it doesn't pencil sometimes. But before we get to answers about that, is that how you read it? Is that why we were talking about community scale in these different pockets of small communities when they are asked the question?
Well, for Molokai, yeah.
Okay.
And the conversations that I'm hearing on Maui, yes.
You're a council member from Maui. I mean, you know,
Molokai. I'm from
but
Molokai.
but Maui Nui, you're a council member, has to make decisions. Like you have to talk to other constituents. Like, is that something that you see on Maui as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And,
Okay.
and that conversations are happening in Lahaina as we speak. They're happening up country. So the conversations are happening for more community controlled decision making over community scale.
And maybe like a lot of you have realized this already. It was an aha moment for me, and maybe I'm just slow, but I think it's an important piece of the puzzle here because for two reasons. One is to understand the nature of that helps to diffuse this idea that, you know, Native Hawaiians are anti-climate resilience or Native Hawaiians are anti-renewable energy or any of those things. It's just like, I think sometimes communities are just tired of it being in their backyard. Maybe it's a NIMBY thing too, but the other part of this then begs the question, well, how do we enter into these conversations when we have to think about the larger collective, the whole island or the whole state or something larger than an ahupua'a to make sure that we can be resilient. We acknowledge we need the larger grid to support community scale, fill in the blank. And I will throw that out to any of you who want to answer it in a way that is like constructive for the group here to understand that, you know, they want to build utility scale because that's what pencils and that's what HECO's asking for, but that's not always the starting point in community conversations. Mana.
Yeah, I have a firm belief. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that point for Hawaii because I think that's an extremely relevant point for Hawaii. And I think the acknowledgement of the overuse of resources in certain communities has now driven to that type of an outcome. And I completely respect and understand that. What I would say is that from an Indigenous perspective in Aotearoa, New Zealand, it's our right, it's our sovereignty, it's our mana motuhake to take that time to learn about the resources that we have. And then it's our right to then decide how we want to utilize those resources and at what scale. Whether we want to utilize those resources at community scale, or whether we want to utilize it at national scale. And it doesn't matter what level of resources we're talking about. And it's about giving us as communities the time to understand the implications of those points. Because it's not right to just say, because you have a utility type solution, you have to be the answer to it. Because again, it's that traumatic journey of so many years of just losing that control, and then now we're starting to get recognized, and the first thing that we're asked to do is be the solution to problems that we didn't create. And so based on that, it's not a matter of, and it's also a concept of timing. So for example, we have Waikato River that goes through our area. At the time when all the allocations of water were given out on the Waikato River, we weren't ready. We weren't acknowledged, we didn't really have access to our lands, and so all of the allocations went. And so when we were now ready to utilize that water for our own development, it was all gone. And we've been having this battle for so many years to say, well, we've got lands, we need water as well, but it's already been allocated before we were ready. So in our Indigenous timeline of 1,000 years, we're going to be ready at some time in that 1,000 years, but when the resources have already been capitalized and utilized away from us, it's very, very difficult to then say, well, you have access to other resources, contribute those as well. When we are ready and we go through it, us at Tauhara, we've decided we're comfortable to be a utility scale. That's our choice. There's other groups that have geothermal, they're not comfortable. That's their choice. They're not wrong, we're not wrong. Because it's our own mana motuhake, and what is wrong is trying to tell each other, community to community, what that should look like. It doesn't mean that even if it's wrong today for this community, that it won't be wrong in 50 years, because it's when they're ready to utilize those resources, because as Keani said, and Andy said, we're the ones who have to live with the results of whatever happens to those resources. We have to be thinking about our kids, our tamariki for generations to come. So I think it's for me, that's sort of the concept is, When we're ready, we'll be there, but give us a chance to understand what we have and also understand what we might be giving up on the positive side as well. Because there are a lot of positive benefits to being at that utility scale. But if we don't see ourselves in the results of those benefits, we sure as hell aren't going to participate in the delivery of those resources to the wider community if our community back home is not going to be rewarded for that or benefited from that.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just add something to that? So it's really, I think it's actually about the utility-sized people and developers being a little bit more self-aware. So when you turn up and say, please give us all your things so we can save all of Hawaii, and you've just said it to someone who has recently been smacked in the nose because they've had everything else taken off them to solve the problems of the community, maybe you should think more about your pitch. You know, maybe you should think more about asking them to pay another price, to take something from them, that something's going to cost them. Maybe you should be thinking about, how do these people win? If I turn up and say, I want this, how would you sell anything else? Here are the benefits. Here's how you're going to win. This is how you directly will result in a win for you. You're not paying the price. You're going to get the benefit of being the group that is there. So I would say it's actually not on the community or the Indigenous group to reconcile how they feel about it. It's about asking developers and people who want to do utility scale to sharpen up their game, come with a better pitch, act like they're human people you actually want to engage with and want to have a 30, 40, 50-year relationship with. So I'd just say, just get them to do better and demand them to do better.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to a couple of the questions here that are coming in from the audience here, and one of them, there's actually a number of them that are talking about just the economics of geothermal and whether it works. And I don't know if this is a fair question because the characterization of the resource is still at such a premature stage, but there's a question here that came in, given the relatively small loads on the islands of Hawaii, do the economics of building thermal energy generation work in Hawaii with a small electricity market?
Yeah, I think that is a question you can't answer because you don't really understand the reservoirs. You haven't done enough science to know what's happening down there and what that reservoir can power, what those pots and pans can look like on top. There's other things that you can do other than just electricity generation as well. You can use that hot fluid for greenhouses and other things that don't necessarily mean electricity generation but can take big, large-scale things off the grid. So I would say it's too early to know. You don't really know your resources well enough yet to understand, but that you should, because whether it's now or, and you have that data, in the future technology is changing and moving so fast that the techno-economics are changing so rapidly that you'll be ready to take advantage of that in the future. And geothermal is about the right pots and pans with the right reservoir, and that'll give you a good price. And so, yeah. Yeah,
and I mean, and stating the obvious here, the additional challenge here is that we're not talking about a statewide network that all works together. We're talking about 6 separate networks that don't interact at all, and that if you were to end up with, I don't know, a potential of 1 gigawatt on Hawaii Island that doesn't actually do much for us with the big hairy gorilla, Oahu, unless we have a way to transport that energy elsewhere. It is an interesting conversation to have if, like, the Big Island became a net exporter of energy rather than a net importer, and the implications there are really interesting. There's also some people who talk about, like, building industry around excess power that might work as well. I want to turn to the next question, and this is, I'll try to kind of abbreviate this down, but you know, this individual is really interested in learning more. And the statement here is that, you know, we only have one power plant, PGV, that was deployed decades ago. With emergent attention to geothermal as a source of local energy production and economic development, what are the 3 specific things that this panel would point towards that would allow Hawaii geothermal projects to reach commercial operation faster than PGV did?
Is everyone staring at me right now? What is that?
Well, I am.
3 things that will make it happen faster. Support people that want to do it. And that means everyone, the thing you need to have a successful geothermal industry is the government to lean in and support. It costs a lot of money, early upfront money to do drilling and other parts of that work. There is not one single country in the world that has a thriving geothermal industry that the government didn't come in early and invest in that early to catalyse that industry. So government has to play a real part in funding that early work if they want the outcomes of, you know, a good geothermal industry. Secondly is that you need to have a key supplier and an industry of experts, suppliers that all work together to offer, you know, their expertise to the industry. So we need really good permitters, we need really good engineers, we need really good, heaps of nerds, we need really good social engagement, we really need community to be on board, we need to have a really connected community of people working together to make it happen and not playing games and defending patches. That's one thing that I see here in Hawaii, which is really interesting, is it hasn't even started yet. So why is there no why are we hiding and trying to, you know, playing chess games about who's going to win and who's going to, you know, everybody's going to lose if you play that game. And there is no need for that behaviour, because geothermal is about micro-site things and they're very specific things. And so I would suggest everyone stop playing stupid games and start leaning in and having conversations with everybody else and stay in your lanes and push together. I think it's really critical because that will create a really dynamic and successful industry going forward. And then think about commercial models that are really good for community, that are good for benefits and outcome. Think about using more than just electricity. Stop focusing on electricity. People focus on the pots and pans because they're really expensive on the top, but they come and go. And let's support those groups that are really trying hard right now to get it done.
Thank you. There's a number of questions that have come in around community engagement and how we frame some of these large topics. This next question, as far as getting the community involved in these discussions, what have you found that works well in encouraging meaningful participation? It can sometimes feel to build public trust in government and help people feel like their perspective and thoughts are valuable. If you could give the government agencies one piece of advice on how to better engage communities and bring them into these conversations, what would it be? And I'm assuming this is beyond like, give us our land back. But in lieu of that, Keani, what else can government agencies do to have fruitful conversations with government agencies?
Not land back?
Well, judging from the tone and tenor of where the conversation went for the audience, I think maybe we're a couple steps ahead, but you know, we're innovators. But I mean, you know, seriously, like, what are some of the ways, like, I'll give you an example. When FEMA came into town after the Lahaina fires, or when FEMA comes into town after the Kona lows, there is a huge undercurrent that happens in social media and other conversations that they're coming to take our land. They're very afraid of the government services that are persisting, and that makes it very difficult for them to access the services to which they pay into by all the taxes we pay here. What are some of the tools that we can use to have a better conversation when it's a government agency, whether it's state, local, or federal, coming into a community like Molokai?
Okay. Well, for us, the model is always, you know, community-led, government-supported. I think what Wayne was speaking to in his presentation about education, what is a megawatt? And Leilani did a really good, I'm probably gonna butcher this, so someone correct me, like educational materials that explain like a rice cooker uses 5 kilowatts of power? No, is that wrong?
A professional rice cooker manufacturer.
Leilani? But you know, like, education, meeting the community where they're at, right? And providing that kind of education and support that builds capacity from within. Whatever the problem, community is always the answer. So,
Let me repeat that back.
okay.
Whatever the problem, community is always the answer. What does that mean to you?
That means the answer is found within community. So be in community. And so, like I was sharing with the Clean Energy Hui, with Ho'ahu Co-op, they would go to all the different events and be in community, have a table set up at the events, find different opportunities to meet with all the different people who may not show up when you call a meeting specifically on energy, because it can be highly technical and, like Andy said, sometimes boring. And so, creating, games and interactive activities that will help to increase the interest and, be in community, period.
This question just came in, and I know we only have a couple of minutes left, and I do want to give time for each of you to kind of give us some final thoughts, but this just came in, and I think it's a really important piece of the puzzle here, and it goes like this. How do you navigate the discussion of creating a geothermal venture when traditional values hold the land as sacred? And we heard a little bit about that from you yesterday, Mana. It came up in the film, and I would pose that to all of you as like, land is sacred. He ali ka aina, he kawa ke kanaka, right? And so what is the balancing point when we're talking about this? Keani, you want to start?
I think one of the things that I learned when we went to Aotearoa, that being in the conversation, one of the things that Mana shared was that in the contractual agreements that they gave the reservoir the rights of a person. Because not all non-Indigenous folks to this place recognize the Aina as chief, that, as the Indigenous ones, we're the ones that have to empower it in the words that those others understand. And so if personhood is what it takes, then sure, we're gonna designate what we revere as kupuna personhood and give it that right and care for it in that way as kupuna.
Andy?
Yeah, I think everybody comes to the table with their story and what they believe in and what they feel is true. And I think it's important that people make decisions that align with their philosophical beliefs and what they truly believe in their heart, and then also understand the burden of existing in the world and providing for your whānau and your future generations, and reconcile that. I think with geothermal, and we talk about land, and we often hear this discussion about how do Indigenous people reconcile, geothermal, and you drill into the ground and you take fluid, and for me, it's not for me to decide that. It's actually for every group that sits there to decide, but also in the context of how do we get oil and gas right now? How are we using, where do we get critical minerals from? How are we, what are we doing right now? Because if you don't choose something you can control or something you participate in or help manage it well, you are choosing something else to carry on and do more of. So it's not a yes or no, it's about what are the choices that we're making in our lives and how we act, and how do we reconcile that with every other choice that we make. Every choice we make is that question, and I think that's important.
Yeah, we're just about at time, and I want to start with Wayne and work our way this way. I'm sure I didn't ask the right questions to get all of the good mana'o out in the time that we had available. So Wayne, and for everyone, if there's one thing that you want to leave with this group here while we're on stage, what is the one important thing that is important to note?
Being united. Like we say back at home, one arrow could be broken easy, but a bunch of arrows together cannot be broken. So I mean, in your respective communities, instead of arguing too much, you'll never get nowhere. But if you guys have a vision of what you want, and again, another thing I always say is, how much do your people mean to you? How much does your community mean to you of getting to where you want to be without having nepotism in the room, without outdoing, outshining everybody, again, but just being one. Like Bob Marley, one love. So with that,
Thank you. Mana.
Yeah, I just want to share a couple of whakatauki or proverbial sayings that I think are really relevant. The first is from one of our Māori kings, and he simply said, he aha te me nui o tēnei ao he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Simply meaning that what is the most important thing in this world? It is people, it is people, it is people. Today our whole conversation is about putting people in place, and I think it is important to understand the connection between people and place when we look at any type of these developments. The other whakatauki or saying that I wanted to share is, he kai o te rangatira he kōrero. And so we don't know what we don't know because we don't share enough with each other. And the more that we share and we have these rangatira conversations or chief-to-chief type conversations with each other, the more we're going to understand each other's perspectives, and most importantly for us as Indigenous, the more we're going to be aware of the resources that surround us so that we know how we can support those resources for the sustainability into our futures as well. So, kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora. I just think, people in place, people isn't just everybody else to solve, people is also you. And if not you, then who? And why not you? So every single one of you is a you. You are people, and you live in a community, and you have aspirations for yourself and your family and your future and their future. So I would say, act now, act imperfectly, just do the best you can, push really hard and start now. And that starts with you. Every day and everything you do, lean into it right now.
I would say that in order for projects to move forward, you have to have trust. And trust is earned, and you have to work for it, and you have to be in community and be willing to be held accountable in order to earn that trust. And you cannot, you must acknowledge the harm that's been done to communities and validate the legitimate feelings that community have for the burdens that they've shouldered for all these years. And only over time and working toward that trust will projects move forward.
How about a big round of applause, everyone, for our panel today? Thank you, folks. And to bookend this panel on the great words of Bob Marley, we do not want to keep our audience waiting in vain for their coffee and dessert. Thank you very much. We'll see you outside. Aloha.
Mahalo, everyone.
Mahalo.
Kia ora.